welcome to the Get Fit with Jodelle podcast. And I'm cold today, but I'm honored to have with me Nathan Walz. He's joined me back on the podcast again. Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Jodelle. Well, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, so we were just talking about how we were trying to be outside, but it's just really, really cold. And it's colder when you sit still and try to podcast. So I was trying to be out there and stay warm, but podcast at the same time, but it didn't work out. 32 degrees was beating me. So now I'm sitting in front of a window talking to you, but we're actually talking about this time of year. It's cold, it's hard to be outside, but yet those of us that know the importance of sunlight and grounding and all the things that we've talked about know that we should probably be out there doing it. But how are we going to do it? How are we going to make it through this shorter light cycle and still get the benefits of vitamin D and grounding and being in nature and fresh air and all of those great benefits that we know we need to be doing? So that's what you and I are going to touch on today. And I just wanted to bounce some ideas back and forth and give people a lot of tips and tricks about how to make it through this winter, the doldrums, the blues, the cold, and the kind of the stress of the holidays even. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So the timing's perfect, Jodelle, because I went through kind of a rough transition myself where, I had like a 3-week period where I just had a ton of stuff going on. It was really dark and gray out. It was rainy. And I was just kind of glued to the computer. And I found myself just feeling down in a slump. I was low energy. Mm-hmm. And I'm always telling people, you got to get outside. And I'm just like, you know what? You got to take your own advice, Nathan. So you can definitely turn these things around.
Absolutely. Well, and it's not just you, actually the reason why I was kind of inspired to do this podcast is because several of my clients within a span of a couple of weeks, when here in the Midwest, it went from 80 degrees one day to the next day it was 40 and it stayed 40. Like it never came back. And we were like, what just happened? Like we didn't even have fall. We went right from summer to winter, and we're like, wait a second, we weren't ready for this. We haven't got out our winter wardrobe yet. But we had to adjust, and so many people had problems during that time of carb cravings and trouble sleeping, and they had issues with just not relaxed, and all of a sudden they had low moods and they were really happy. And these were all people who were implementing being outside, being in nature, being in sunshine, what I call ESPN, vitamin ESPN, earthing, sunshine, pleasure, and nature, doing all
Jodelle, you always have the best acronyms. Every time I talk to you, I learn a new one.
Well, there you go. Awesome. Vitamin ESPN. It's not a sports channel. So
yeah, good stuff.
But yeah, and so I saw this coming together, and I was like, okay, we have to do a podcast and get people through this winter. So this will hopefully be a saving grace and just give people some ideas about how am I going to do this? I want to keep going with my wellness. So let's talk. Like, so you said you had that feeling, and what was like the first thing you went out and did that you noticed a difference of?
So a couple things. So I had a weekend where I didn't have a lot going on. I went for a hike, and I wore my Kaniki under my shorts. So a Kaniki is tan through swimwear. Mm-hmm. And I didn't wear it because it's tan through. I wore it because it's super thin. It's kind of like having a pair of boxers on. And it just made it really easy. So the reason I wore it is because I wanted to go for a swim during my hike.
Oh, cool.
So by getting my butt outside to go for that walk outside, that made me feel really good. Mm-hmm. Then to take things to the next level, the hike I did was along, this is not a river, more of a stream. And we had a ton of rain because I was trapped inside for probably 2 weeks because it did nothing but rain. And I had never seen the water so high, but I found a spot where it wasn't like too rough, and I went for a swim. And it was funny because I saw other like hikers along the way, and people had like down jackets on and like like their faux fur collars, or maybe they were real. And then 3 people came along when I was swimming, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Just going for a swim. It's nice. You should come in." And they're like, "No thanks."
And so the benefits for you of cold thermogenesis, because that's what that would be. What would those be? Like, what did you immediately feel?
Cold, but okay. But the second thing I felt was alive. Mm-hmm. So when that cold water, hits your skin and that cold penetrates to your very depths, the first thing is like, holy shit, this is like really cold. But then you're like, this feels amazing. So it gives you a really good boost of dopamine.
Yes.
So that's why, even people that have never heard of this before and are just like, holy cow, that sounds crazy. If you're feeling down, this will turn things around instantly, just like that. And it's so energizing. So I only stayed in the water for about a minute, and then I got out, but my whole skin was just, I could feel the energy kind of flowing through it. I just felt alive, and I felt great. And,
so cool.
Before going in the water, there was that moment of hesitation, like, do I really want to do this? It builds mental toughness too, because like part of me was like, yes, you want to do this, but part of me was like, it's going to be really cold. But I've been doing this for a while, so I've adapted to it, but I hadn't done it all summer. So as soon as I got in and just felt that feeling, I knew I made the right choice, and I was glad I did it.
Yeah. And so for people that maybe this is like an extreme way of like mitigating the winter doldrums, because it's like the most potent cup of coffee you've ever had. That's what the wake up energy is that you feel when you do it. But if somebody's just starting out, what would you recommend they try first?
Oh, it's very simple. You just fill up a large bowl with ice water, you hold your breath, and you plunge your face in there.
Exactly.
And you do it for as long as you can. And the first time you do it, it's going to be very painful. I'll be totally honest, because you're not used to it. But you can start off with less ice in the beginning. I do a lot of ice. I'll get the water down to around 36, 37 degrees. But you can get it down to about 50. You'll still get a positive benefit. But that will give you a great burst of energy. It'll wake you up. It'll give you that hit of dopamine and make you feel really good. A lot of people that have anxiety when they do it, they report not having anxiety. If you have a migraine headache, it'll make the headache go away.
Absolutely.
So when you start out, you hold your breath, put your face in there as long as you can, come out, give yourself like a minute rest, and do it again, and do it for 5 times. And do it each day. And what you'll notice is you start to adapt to it, and it becomes easier. And you want to keep doing it until you get to the point where you can keep your face in the water all 5 times for as long as you can hold your breath. And you want to kind of slowly dial the temperature of the water down too. This is going to help kind of push it further. But what that does is that creates a biochemical change in your brain. And you've got your trigeminal nerve, which comes kind of down to here. And when that cold hits that nerve, it tells your brain that cold times are ahead. So it's part of our evolutionary adaptation to cold, because if you go back far enough, we didn't always have heated homes. And people wore furs and, had some kind of clothing, but it was nothing like what we have today. Houses were very drafty, maybe you had a fire, but people were accustomed to much colder times. So with it, that's still in us. We still are able to adapt to the cold, but from coddling ourselves our entire lives, a lot of people I know have remote control cars, so they can warm the car up in the winter. Right. So they only have to, go from their door to the car, or maybe it's in the garage. But people get very little cold exposure for the most part today, unless you have a job, like that makes you work outside.
It's true. I mean, I think there's a statistic that said that 75% of people years ago, like at the beginning of the century, used to work outdoors. Now 75% work indoors. And like you were saying, our houses are warm, our cars are warm and ready, our office buildings are warm. And people also forget we didn't have water heaters when life first started. So you took a cold shower if you wanted to. Yeah, if you wanted to get clean, you plunged in the cold river, or you stood under a cold waterfall, and that's how you got clean. And so we have all these modern conveniences that make life a lot warmer, but yet we need to cold adapt. And I even have a client, which I don't want to call her out or undermine her at all, but she has what she says she was told by a doctor is a cold allergy. And whether this truly exists or not, I have trouble believing, because your body was made to be cold to some extent, to handle the cold, I should say. And so maybe she has a cold intolerance because her system is not functioning optimally to handle cold. Like maybe people get that Raynaud's where the blood comes out of their fingers, and they get where you can't even touch them. You don't even know if they're working and they're white and the rest of you is red. Okay, that's a cold intolerance. There's a circulatory issue going on that you need to build up the health of the mitochondria in the body and build up the circulation so that it comes back. But I wouldn't call that a cold allergy, because to be not in the cold means that you're going to miss out on being outdoors. And we were made to be outdoor beings, not indoor beings. So.
Yeah, actually, just kind of like the way you talk that through, but any kind of like common sense person, if you kind of think it through, it's like, yeah, life before us was able to handle it. Why would it be an allergy today all of a sudden? It makes zero sense.
Yeah. So sometimes I think doctors will say things that maybe aren't, I haven't seen scientific data on cold allergy, but I mean, it could be there. I'm just saying it sounds more like a cold intolerance. But, another thing is, like, I put a video out, just a quick little snippet on my Patreon recently, where I go outside when it's cold. Like the other day, it was 19 degrees when I got up in the morning, and I'm like, I don't care. I have to be outside. So if people will cover up their extremities, like your fingers, your feet, but put on like a vest and leave your arms exposed, your face exposed. I even had long pants and wool socks because it was cold, but I at least wanted to expose my arms. And I went out and I watched the sun come up because there was no clouds. It was sunny, and I got to sit and watch the sunrise. And if we can think in terms of that and forget about what your neighbors are thinking, that why you're in like shorts and a t-shirt with gloves and shoes on, but you're trying to get sunlight in your eyes, who cares? Like, just do these little things that allow you to be outside. So cover up your coldest areas, but then allow yourself to be outside. And I also wanted to touch on the fact that you wear a kaniki, because there is a lot of tan-through clothing out there now that people could, wear layers of and undo their hoodie and just get some sun through that tan-through shirt or something like that. I think that can even be beneficial for when you're outside taking a walk, like you mentioned. Like, just somehow get more rays than you normally would this time of year. Where do you live exactly?
100%.
Like, or what part of the country are you in again?
I live in Ithaca, New York. It's where Cornell University is.
So you get really cold, like, right? I mean, you get mostly snow.
Yeah, we haven't had any days in the teens yet, like you have.
Okay.
But it's coming. I think on Thanksgiving we have a high of 20.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah, we get some extreme cold weather. Not as cold as other parts of the country, but relative to a lot of the rest of the country, it gets very cold here.
Yeah, and do people still go outside? Because where I live, if it gets cold, nobody goes outside. And there's even, like, the news says there's a cold advisory. So, don't allow your children to go out of doors. And I'm like, what? Like, I don't understand that. Like, why can't we put more clothes on and go outside?
Yeah, well, as a whole, society has gotten pretty soft. I'm not sure if we've ever had days where they advise against children going outside. I know on super cold days they will cancel school just because they don't want kids waiting outside for the bus, and potentially kids could get frostbite. Yeah. So yeah, it's like you said, make sure you have enough clothes on. But it's amazing, like in the middle of the winter where I live, it's very dark and cloudy.
Okay.
So when we do get a nice sunny day in the winter, I'll always go for a walk. And there's a park not too far from me with a nice trail. It goes like kind of along a river or canal. And I'll do that walk a lot. And I did it actually, it was just a couple of weeks ago. I think it was like in the 50s and it was sunny. So I'm just out there in a t-shirt.
Nice.
And I saw very few people, and the people I did see were just bundled up from head to toe like it was the dead of winter. And I'll do that walk in the wintertime too when it's really cold, and I'll see even fewer people. And the people I do see, again, they're so bundled up. They have their hoods up, they have their sunglasses on, and they have like 3 square inches of skin exposed to the sun. So they're really missing out. It's good that they're getting out for a walk, but they could be getting more benefits if they would show a little more skin.
Right.
And, take their glasses off too. So you want to, when it's cold out, the most important thing to get in the sun are your eyes. So you want to take your glasses off. If you wear contacts, you want to ditch your contacts, go to glasses. So when you're outside, and you can safely do so. If you need your glasses to drive, I don't want you to get in a wreck. But if you can safely do so when you're outside, you want to get that sunlight in your eyes so it's setting your circadian rhythm. Also, there's UVA light that you can get year-round. With that UVA light, you can make dopamine, which is going to give you more motivation. You make serotonin, which is going to make you happier. make melatonin, which is going to help you sleep better. And then you're going to have more energy the next day when you wake up.
Right. And I definitely want to get to sleep and why it is a little bit longer, and it's okay to be a little bit longer this time of year too. But I wanted to also, I think that's great that you're mentioning about the eyes, because I think that's the one thing people could do when maybe their UV index is going to be 0 up in New York when it gets really, really bitterly cold and the sun's out, but you really don't get that much rays, you know. But still you get the sunlight in your eyes, you still make that serotonin like you were mentioning. And that could be a saving grace to keep you from the winter doldrums, the blues and things like that. So I think that's important, even if it's just 1 to 3 minutes first thing in the morning when that bright morning sun is coming up. Just go out and get that. And like you said, removing those contacts, or in my case, sometimes if I have them in, I'll like take them and move them over so they're not right on. So I can see, like, sometimes I have to wait till the sun comes out and I'm already out starting my day. And so I'm like, okay, I'm out. I can't take my contacts out right now. So I'm just moving them over. So people probably see me sticking my pinkies in my eye. That's what I'm doing. But I came up recently with, well, I didn't come up with it. I'm sure other people are doing it, but I had to like muddle through this week we had where we had clouds and no sun. Like, I don't do well with that. So I was like, okay, something bad's going to happen if I don't get some sort of light going on. So I went on Amazon, I ordered a reptile light. Have you done this? Like, have you played around with the reptile lights? They actually emit some trace amounts of like vitamin D they help you make. So
yeah. I've got one. I'll do it probably, you know, if it's just really dark and cloudy and I can't get outside all day, I'll do like an hour of it. I have a UVA light behind my computer to help kind of offset, since you don't get a full spectrum of light from your computer, black lights. So if you've ever been to a party, you know, sometimes they have black light parties and it makes things glow. Or maybe you were a kid and you had black light posters in your room or something. But black lights actually emit UVA light. That's so cool. It's not a lot, but it is a little bit, so you can kind of help to offset that lack of color spectrum that you get from your computer.
Now, is there one that you recommend? Is there a brand or a style that people should look for?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name. It might be Sunlighten is the brand that I have. But there's not a specific brand I recommend. I just got it from Amazon. But I do have, it is one of like the curly Q fluorescent ones, as opposed to an incandescent black light. So I don't have a spectrometer. It would be interesting to take a measurement of both kinds and see if one is better than the other. But I just got the curly Q one just, you know, because they last a lot longer and don't burn out.
Yeah, that's great. So you keep it kind of alongside or behind your computer, kind of shining at you?
Yeah, so, you know, those bulbs do put off some EMFs. So I do have it a few feet behind my laptop here, just so I don't get, you know, any EMFs.
Yeah, I know. We don't need any more of those, huh? So
no, not at all.
The reptile lamp I found on Amazon, I think it's called Solar Grow, and it's I looked on it and it actually says the closer you are to it, the more vitamin D IUs you'll make. So for those people like yourself that live in like a society where, I mean, a location where the clouds are really thick, I guess, this time of year, or like Seattle and those areas that don't see a lot of sun, it might be really beneficial to have something like this lamp, this reptile lamp, to kind of help you get through the winter. So yeah, it's definitely worth looking into it. You know, another thing, I haven't done it yet, but it's something I have done in past winters, and this might sound counterintuitive to a lot of people, but I'll go tanning too. I was going to ask you about that, what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I think it's fine to use once in a while because you are getting UVB light. So you are making some vitamin D. You're getting, you know, UVA light as well. And as long as you don't do it too much, some people are super EHS, you know, electrohypersensitive.
Right.
So if you're electrohypersensitive, probably not a good idea. But if you're not, it's something that's worth trying to see how it makes you feel. But it will give you a boost in your dopamine. You will make some extra vitamin D, so it's going to help with your immunity. And, you know, you'll get rid of that pale skin too. Yeah,
absolutely. Just a little touch of color for the winter. Yeah, that feels good. Yeah, I think you're spot on there. As if somebody were going to do it, every day or every other day might be a little excessive, but just to get you through those times when you just need some more light and you just need to feel a little more optimal, I don't see why it wouldn't be bad doing it once a week or once every a couple of weeks or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So I kind of was wondering too about like teaching people how to match their phone to the sky. And what I mean by that is the light of the phone, because still I can't seem to get people out of this mentality all the time where they're just staring at this little device all the time, because we kind of have to live by it. Those of us that have businesses, we run on it too. But there is a way that you can kind of hack your phone, so to speak, to match the light of the sky. That way you're not
Okay.
getting any more light than you normally would if you were just being outside. And so I
So
didn't
is
know.
that different than using night shift?
It is. And so I didn't know
Okay.
if you had played around with this or not, but if you're interested, I wanted to show it to you. Do you have an
Yeah.
iPhone or do you have an Android?
I have an iPhone. I'll grab
Okay.
it. It's over here.
Okay, so I thought this would be fun to walk through the viewers with, and I'm not the one that came up with this. Actually, you've interviewed him before, Matt Maruka. I learned this off
Okay.
one of his podcasts, so I'll give him all the credit. And I just was recently
Yeah. Yeah. That's
podcasting.
awesome.
He is. I just got to do my first podcast with him before you. I just was talking
Oh,
with him.
cool. I'll have to
So
check it out.
yes, he is just a wealth of fun to interview. So
Oh,
here's
yeah.
what people are going to do. So I'll just walk you guys through this. So the first thing you're going to do is go to your settings. So your settings are, and you can actually already see, do you see how reddish my screen is? I don't know if you can see
Yeah.
how red.
I do the thing where at night I'll turn it pretty red.
Okay. Do you do the
You can
color
kind of see it.
filters? Oh yeah, look, you have the color filters. Is that what
Yeah.
you do? You go to the color filters?
Yeah, I think so. There was some. I saw some article on how to do it, and I did it. But show me how you do it to match it to the sky, because I don't know how to do that one.
Okay, well, you have to do it yourself. I mean, it's not going to just match up every time you do it. And mine's all like I'm talking, you're doing it manually. But
Uh-huh.
just so people know, you go to your general. And then once you're in general, you go to accessibility. And then once you're in there, you go to display accommodations. And then once you're in there, you go to color filters. And you turn on your color filter. So mine is on. If I turn it off, it's going to go back to kind of that normal night shift, mode, because I always
Hmm.
keep my night shift on. If I turn it on, it gets pretty red. Then you go down here to intensity and you can turn it up to really red. So at night, after the sun goes down, this would be a good place to go. You can do one more thing where you can go back to reduce the white point, and now you can barely see your screen. So like if you were going to play on your phone at night where the house is, you've dimmed your lights, you're doing all the great things to kind of mitigate your environment and turn those house lights down, you would be able to see this a lot better, but it would barely be anything that would, kind of light your face up. Because if you'll watch people when they're on their phones at night, it's like this white light coming up and lighting their face up. And
Yeah, yeah, it's so bright, and if you're not used to it, it's almost blinding.
it is, and that's the blue light we're talking about. That's the little mini sun that's shining in your face and going, it's noon, it's noon, it's noon. Okay, so what I mean by is look at the sky and see what kind of temperature you should have your phone. So basically, you're putting it at night, you're putting it on that reduced white point, and it's like almost like
Hmm.
it's the night sky. Okay, then what I do is I kind of keep it on like when I get up in the morning, I kind of either keep it, because I get up pretty early, like about 5 a.m. So until it's like
Hmm.
6 a.m. and the sun's starting to come up, I kind of look outside and I go, okay, it's still pretty dark, so I'm going to keep it on the intensity, but maybe I'll slowly turn it up a little bit, still on the red. And then as the sun starts to come up, then I reduce the intensity a little bit more. And then after the sun's up, I turn off the color filter to where now it's matching. And if you hold your phone up like to a window or you're outside and you just match the phone to the sun, I just feel like that's
Hmm.
something that can help not create too much more blue light exposure than we're already getting, and that we should be getting naturally from the sun. So we're not adding to
Yeah,
any of that. And then as
yeah,
the
for
sun
sure.
goes down, you go back and do the same thing again. The sun's going down, turning on my color filters. As the night goes down, I mean, again, you have to do this all manually. You have to go back in there and do it. but
Hmm.
it's one more step to be able to be in this modernized society and not let it affect you so immensely, so that's
Yeah.
just my little tips
Yeah.
there, but maybe you have some others. Now, how did you get it to where it will, you just press that button and it did that? Because I don't know how to do that.
You, I did it, I don't know, probably a month or so back. I can send you a link to the article. It was like in Wired, one of those kind of tech websites.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you want, I'll send you a link to it. But it's basically going where you did, where you were showing us.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one other setting where you program it. So I triple click it. So I hit the home button 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
That activates it or turns it off.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to
So
send me that and I can
so
put
you
it
know
in
how
the
to turn it
show
red.
notes.
And I'll send you a link so you can, set it up so it's automatic, so you don't have to, because a lot of people aren't going to like take the time to go in there and change it throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
Me being one of those, I think it's awesome if you do that. But I just, once the sun goes down, I turn it red.
Mm-hmm.
And in the morning, I get up before the sunrise too. So I'll wear blue blocking glasses in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I cover up my skin because lots of times, just like you, we have to get up and we have to do stuff.
Yeah.
Can't just sit around in the dark until the sun comes up.
Yeah.
That's just not realistic for most of us.
I'm so glad
But
you brought that up, because I had that on my list to talk with you about that, about how it's not just night. A lot of people are just thinking now in terms of nighttime after the sun goes down, I got to turn everything down. But we really don't want to spike anything too early either. So talk a little more about that.
yeah, so the first light you want to see in the morning really should be from sunlight. And if you do have to expose yourself to light, like we're saying, just because we have lives and we have stuff to do, you really want to minimize it. So I wear blue blockers. So I'm not getting that signal telling my brain that it's a different time than it really is.
Mm-hmm.
And in the morning, you really want the first light or first blue light to be from sunlight, because the color temperature, so when the sun comes up and is rising in the morning, the color temperature, I think it's like 1750 or something like that. But when those frequencies of light go in your eye, they set your circadian rhythm, and they basically tell your pituitary gland to start releasing hormones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what a lot of people do is the first thing in the morning, they get up and they look at their phone. They don't have any of these color temperature things on. So it's the normal bright blue, which is about anywhere from 5,700 to 6,200 Kelvin, which is pretty much solar noon.
Mm-hmm.
So that's telling your pituitary gland basically to release hormones. But the thing that the information it's not getting, and at that time of day, it's releasing a different set of hormones.
Right.
So you're basically telling your brain, okay, it's noon when it's really 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So what's happening is you're getting that release of hormones. But when you watch the sunrise, you get that release of hormones. But then about 30 minutes after sunrise, you get UVA light that enters the spectrum, and that sends a signal to stop releasing hormones.
That's so good.
So,
yeah, I think.
So what happens is, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Jodelle, if you have a car and gas works but the brake doesn't work, what happens at some point?
You can't stop. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to crash at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens over time when you never get outside, especially during the winter time. You look at your phone first thing in the morning, or you turn on your light and it's an LED light or a fluorescent light. You get the on switch for the hormones, and you're rarely getting outside, so you're never getting that off switch. Or if you're on your phone right before you go to bed. So you have that on switch for your hormones, and you're never getting that off switch. So over time, your body fatigues from making hormones. You get very low hormone levels, and that's when you really kind of feel like crap. If you're a guy and a lady too, because ladies need testosterone as well.
Right.
But all of a sudden, you have a hard time putting on muscle. You get some extra flab, and you can't lose that because you have low testosterone. You don't feel good. You don't feel motivated because you have lower dopamine levels. Testosterone is also behind motivation too. And there's a whole bunch of other hormones that get thrown off track when you chronically do that.
Right. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because I have seen in my practice an influx of low testosterone in women. And it's like an epidemic. And I don't think people are correlating, they think it's all about food, or they think there's something, I'm going into menopause, or something's happening hormonally and I don't know why, so I need to be on bioidentical hormones. They're not thinking in terms of, how did this happen? Like, And it's only been in the past decade that we've really been wrapped up in like this idea that we have to be so connected to these devices at every minute of the day. So I think it's culminated into exactly what you're talking about, where their light cycle's starting way too early and the brain is producing way too many signals to send out the wrong hormones at the wrong time, too many of them. And like you said, they're going too fast, too quickly, and they can't stop. And, you know, when the body's under any sort of stress, which we know that blue light and radiation is a stressor to the body, cortisol takes a front seat and everything else takes a back seat. So then your fat loss hormones, your energy, everything tanks because your body's just going, okay, I'm just trying to keep you alive right now because we're in such a stress
Yeah.
state. So
Right.
yeah, and it's good that you even mentioned covering your body, because what they're doing too is, yeah, they're getting up and immediately going to their phone, but then they're flipping on all the lights in the house, which I used to be guilty of until I realized, wow, this doesn't feel natural to me anymore. I don't want the light until the natural light comes in my house, you know? And I think that plays a big part. It's not just about what our eyes are seeing and covering up with blue blockers, but like you said, you cover up your with clothes until the sun comes up because you don't want probably that house light to affect the melanopsin receptors in your skin. So
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I'm really glad you brought that up. But we just found out about this in 2017,
right.
that we have these photoreceptors called melanopsin in our skin. So you can have your eyes covered, but you know, if you're in just kind of shorts and a t-shirt, you're getting all this fake light exposure on your skin. It's also sending a different signal to your skin that goes to your brain, and it gets interpreted that it's a different time of day that it is. The other thing is blue light is very high energy. And when you get hit with just blue light, it causes inflammation. So the other thing that we're finding out is vitamin A is always paired to different photoreceptors. So melanopsin is just one of them. But when this blue light penetrates your skin, because it can penetrate 1 to 3 centimeters,
right.
it breaks the bond. So I don't want to get too technical here, but melanopsin and vitamin A are chemically bonded together. Blue light can break that bond. And when vitamin A is not attached to a photoreceptor, it actually becomes toxic.
Like a fat that go rancid, yeah.
Yeah. So it's really bad news. You know, nobody's talking about this, but it's really interesting because we're seeing headlines, not just from, you know, medical papers and medical websites and university websites, but also from the mainstream media of talking about all the harms of blue light, how it causes cancer, how it's bad for your skin, how it's behind anxiety and depression. And actually, I have a corporate talk coming up, and I put a slide together with all these different headlines. There's probably 20, maybe 25 different headlines, all with blue light in the title.
Wow.
So we have all these different, even, you know, mainstream outlets like CNN or Yahoo News talking about this, but very few people are doing anything about it. And yeah, there are people like Matt Maruka selling blue blocking glasses, which is totally awesome. But, you know, my son goes to nursery school, and all the lights in the school are fluorescent lights. Yeah. They don't use iPads in there, but I know other parents with children, and their young children are using iPads in school all day in buildings without windows.
Exactly.
So our children, who are even more sensitive to these blue light frequencies of light, are being exposed to this all day. Then they come home, and mom and dad, and I'm guilty of this too, but sometimes we'll set our children in front of a TV show. My son does have his blue blockers on when he watches them.
Good dad.
But there's just this chronic exposure that not just us adults are getting, and it's causing all sorts of problems in us, but children today too. And if you look at the statistics, and I don't want to bring people down, but people need to be aware of this. If you look at the statistics, children are sicker today than they ever have been. Like suicide. Can you imagine like a little kid being so sad that they take their own life? We have single kids in their single digits taking their own lives in numbers that we've never ever seen before. Kids with depression, you know, autism is getting higher and higher. ADD, ADHD, all these different, you know, childhood cancer. I mean, when I was growing up, there was one kid in my class that had cancer. Now I'm hearing about kids all the time that have cancer. So this stuff, it's exploding, and it's kind of happening. A lot of people are just kind of blind to it, and a lot of people are accepting it, and they're just kind of like, oh, well, it just happened. Well, no, it didn't just happen. It happened as a result of this environment that we're all exposed to. And until, I'm so glad that you share this information. People like Matt and Ruka share this information. A lot of people sharing this information, not enough people doing things about it, like the schools.
Right.
There's not legislation right now protecting our children. And, if you look at smoking, how long it took for that, we knew smoking was bad in the 50s. It wasn't until 1964 that the Surgeon General came out and said, smoking causes cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't really until 2000 where we started being protected by cigarette smoking, by having like smoke-free zones and having legislation to make it illegal to smoke in restaurants, but you can still smoke in some restaurants down in the South.
Yeah.
So if it took that long for a dirty, filthy habit like cigarette smoking, how long is it going to take for something cool like blue light that's in all of our technology that we love? And I have an iPhone too. I have all these gadgets myself. I love them. But what's it going to take to wake people up to what's going on and all this harm that it's causing?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know what the answer is to that, because since our society kind of runs off of blue lit devices, it's like, I don't know how to mitigate it other than just doing it ourselves. We might not be able to change the entire universe, but we can at least change, be the change. And that's kind of what Matt and I were talking about when we were podcasting, is exactly what you're saying about the young people of this world are just so bombarded with stuff that we never had growing up. I mean, even just 20 years ago, I graduated in 1997 from high school, and I didn't come home with headaches. I didn't come home with, I wasn't diagnosed with Epstein-Barr. I didn't have juvenile arthritis. I only had one kid in my class who would have been considered either Asperger or autism. And now it's like so many kids. And all of my nieces come home and go, should I get some of those blue blockers? Because I have a terrible headache every day at school. And I said, yes. And they're on Chromebooks all day long, and they're sick. Like, they don't feel good. They all are coming home and taking naps. Even if they don't want to, they fall asleep when they get home. It's called overstimulation. There's like so much technology, so much Wi-Fi in the schools, so much blue light in the schools, so much fluorescent lighting in the schools, that it's almost like their poor little systems are just overloaded, and they almost have to shut down when they get home because they can't focus. But yet then the only thing they know to do is like be on a device. Like, I was at a family gathering, and my sister-in-law was braiding one of my niece's hair just for fun. They were just playing, and I said, wow, you're really good at that. And she's like, well, I had 5 sisters growing up, so I that's all we did. We didn't have cell phones to play with. And I said, that's so true. Like, kids, like, they don't do a lot of hands-on stuff anymore. Their hands are only on this, and they're not like experiencing life. They're not learning things with their hands anymore. It's just about, let me Google or YouTube a video about how to braid somebody's hair, and then I'm just going to go do it. But we learn by experience. We learn by feeling. We learn texture. We learn what not to do by trial and error. And I think they're missing out on that. So I think a big chunk of it is if we could not only do this for ourselves, but also teach it to our children and say, this is the importance of going outside. This is the importance of, even though you might have to be in school all day, here's some blue blockers to wear, and let me tell you why you might want to wear them, and just educating them so that they have a future. Like, we don't know what this technology is going to do to these little bodies, because this is the first generation that's had it their entire lives versus us who come into it later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You said something really interesting, how, we're so prone to just kind of Google anything we want to know. And, we're essentially outsourcing our thinking to Google when we do that. Mm-hmm. And I Google things myself, but I want to warn people of getting into the habit of Googling every single thing, and to challenge yourself. When you come up with a question or you want to know something, try to think it through first, because when you think things through and you use your brain, you build up neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
When you outsource it to Google, you don't use those neural pathways. Over time, they break down. And what else are we seeing in our society, Jodelle? We're seeing an explosion in neurodegeneration, and it's happening younger and younger and younger.
Absolutely. It's a low dopamine society. So, we've touched a little bit on, in our last podcast, the whole dopamine aspects of how that happens. And the people that are watching this, I assume, have like upped their dopamine a little because they're curious about how to help themselves. But there's many people out there that aren't even asking questions, and young people included. They're so caught up in the technology that they become kind of like this. I don't want to use like it's a zombie apocalypse already where they're little zombies walking around behind their devices, but I'm kind of scared that that's what it is. And I'm just being real. I might get hate comments down below that our youth aren't that, you know, into their devices, but I'm just going by what I see. And it kind of scares me. And I think part of it needs to be the parents saying, you know, setting limits when the child might be having so much low dopamine that they can't set limits for themselves, and just spending time with them and leading by example and saying, okay, we're having a tech-free table tonight. We're going to eat dinner, no tech. We're going to go out to a family restaurant dinner and have no technology, you know, something like that to help show them that we can have fun without technology. We can have fun without playing games or playing words with friends or trivia or whatever it is that everybody's doing. And like you said with Google, there's still a beautiful place everybody can go to find information called the library. That's where I am. And a big shout out to Bentonville, Arkansas Library, because I'm at the Bentonville, Arkansas Library right now.
Yeah,
It's
awesome.
wonderful.
I love it.
Yeah, because I mean, you can look things up in books and you can read them and you can feel it and feel the texture of the book in your hands. And it's a lost art, and it's a quiet space. And I just really want to like shout out to libraries, you know.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm so glad you brought that up. And I don't know have you read how like the new trend in Silicon Valley?
No, please tell me.
So I think it was on October 28th. The New York Times had 3 articles. They were both all opinion pieces, I think, on the same day, all talking about how Silicon Valley tech execs, one of them was how they're sending their kids to schools that don't allow technology.
Wow.
So they're learning from books. They're having to write with pen and paper.
Okay.
Another one said that they're having their babysitters and nannies sign contracts that they won't allow their children access to screens.
So good.
And another was just talking about, it had something to do with screens in Silicon Valley and basically, you know, those children not being exposed to it. Oh, it was talking about the growing divide in something, and it's real. I forget the name of it, but it's really interesting, and it's saying how lower class and middle class children are going to be raised by screens, whereas the wealthy and upper class are being raised without screens. And they're talking about the benefits that they're going to get from that. So these Silicon Valley tech execs are very happy to manufacture all these different devices and software and things like that and sell them to you, different parents, so you can buy them, use them yourself and for your children, but they don't want this stuff anywhere near their own children. So do you think that they know something that the rest of us don't necessarily know?
I would say yes, yeah. And with regard to, I think Steve Jobs did that with his kids. Like he wouldn't let his kids have any Apple devices. So what are we not knowing?
Bill Gates was the same way.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and it's not just, you know, I don't want to just point the finger at kids, because I think it's now just mainstream. Like obviously you can walk through an airport and see that. When I was younger and I used to fly, you would talk to people in the waiting area, and now everybody's just in their own little world. And it's like we're missing out on connection. You know, Matt and I were talking about the law of connectedness, just like you were mentioning how the vitamin A needs to bond to melanopsin. It's connection. And that's how our whole system works. We need to be connected to the earth and barefoot. We need to be connected to the sun and out in it. And we need to be connected to each other. And so it's what I called the law of connectedness. Like let's get together, you know, let's get together and be all right, you know.
Godell's 3 C's of connection. But it's so true. I mean, humans are social creatures. Yeah. And one of the things about the blue zones of why they live longer is because of their social connections, because they have very tight communities. They're very family oriented. They spend a lot of time amongst each other. So what's happening with our society where, when you go out to a restaurant these days, you know, the kids each have their iPad or their parents' phones, or the parents are on their phones. And we have even when we're together, we're not being social. And it's really sad. And, you know, again, when you look at the statistics, our longevity is going in the opposite direction.
Right.
So for the first time in recent history, instead of, year over year, we're getting healthier because of medical advancements and things like that. Now we're dying sooner, and it's a new trend. I don't think it's going to turn around anytime soon. I think there will be a certain subset of people that do live above average because they know these things, and they're, limiting their technology use, they're dialing in their diet, they're connecting to the earth, they're doing these different biohacks. So I think a certain subset is going to do very well. But by and large, the general population, if you're not paying attention to these things, you're going to get sick sooner. You're going to deal with more symptoms than you otherwise would, and you're going to die younger, and you're going to live a lower quality life. So this stuff might sound like hyperbole, but, Jodelle and I, we study this stuff, and, we're always reading these different articles. So we're very aware of it. But, I want to bring this to everyone's attention. Look around you and just kind of question these things. Like, is this normal for children to be overweight and obese? Is this normal for all these children to have cancer? Is it normal to go to a funeral of somebody in their 40s or their 50s that didn't get killed by some like really horrible accident, right? They died because they got sick because they lived in a bad environment. And they didn't take care of themselves. They never took the initiative to figure out what's going on with my health. They just kind of like went along with everything. And like you said, Jodelle, they're zombies, right? They're just going through the motions of life, not questioning anything. And is it any shock that this is happening to so many people?
No, it's just really
unfortunate. So I'm kind of going off like on a lot of tangents today, so I apologize, but I'm just in one of those moods. So
I think I took you there though, so it's okay. We started out with like mitigating the winter, but we went into like longevity and like taking care of our families and stuff. But that's where we can go because it's our podcast. So
yeah, that's right. So back to your first question, which I didn't fully answer, but Jodelle, the real key is just finding some activity that's going to take you outside.
Yeah.
So it's whatever that activity is that you can find that's going to get you outside. So for me, I like hiking. So I do my best to go on hikes at least once a week. If I get a break, if it's sunny, I'll be sure to like go for a quick walk. I'll do this loop. It's like a 2-mile loop around this park that goes along a river. And it's just, for me, it's a very enjoyable walk. I get really heavy into cold exposure. I started actually, so right after I had that slump of 3 weeks where I was really dragging, I was feeling down. And I forced myself to get in a tub of cold water. Oh wait, no, I did the hike and I went swimming in the water. But then I've been doing like 3 to 4 days a week. I'll do a cold bath in the morning. I have a red light in the bathroom because it's, the sun hasn't even come up yet.
Right.
I'm in that cold bath, and it's the hardest thing to get in there. But once I get in there, it's like, this wasn't so bad. And then I get out. I feel good. I feel alive. I've got that extra energy. I'm just like, I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah.
So the other thing that really gets me through the winter is going to the sauna at my gym. So I do a dry sauna. And if you're kind of like a scaredy cat of the cold, go hang out in the sauna. I do 30 minutes in my sauna. It's super hot at my gym. It's like 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's like super hot. But then, I'll leave the gym and I'll just be in my t-shirt. And you do want to take a cold shower after because you're sweating out a lot of toxins. So you want to keep your pores, you want to go in the cold to close your pores, rinse all that sweat off because it's full of toxins. But then you're going to be super warm. You can go outside in the cold and have some skin exposed and get some extra benefits that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people, like, I want to go back to a point that you mentioned about how blue light is so energy robbing too. So it's not just about energy that we need to get back from the sun. We start seeking it out more in food. So the more somebody's on a device, the more blue light they have, whether it's from their home or their devices or whatever, the more they're going to go, why can't I keep my hand out of the office candy bowl? Why can't I, stop going back to the pantry? Why am I so hungry? And a lot of people, I get them to think about it. Think about a really rainy day when you're stuck inside and you want to kind of eat all day versus when you've been outside on the lake or at the ocean all day, you don't really think about food. Like you might get hungry when you're done because you've been playing so hard, but throughout that whole time, you're not going, ooh, I want to eat something. I want to nibble. I'm hungry. Oh, I'm so famished all day. That we get energy from the sun, and we don't have to use as much energy from food if we don't expose ourselves to so much blue light. So in the doldrums of winter, when you're stuck inside and it's dark and it's colder more often, think about that when you get those cravings, and maybe you can do something like drink more water, because the indoor dry air dries us out and you could just be dehydrated, to where you need to drink loads more water during the winter to mitigate some of that need for food. And then also, like you said, going outside as much as you can, even if it's cold, and like I was mentioning, bundling up, but just getting some part of your body connected to the sun and the earth, you will find that, okay, maybe I'm not quite as hungry as I thought. I just took a sunshine snack break, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing, I mean, the other reason, we're craving, a cookie jar or, those chips or whatever, is because we need that extra hit of dopamine.
Yeah.
Because, you're getting all that blue light exposure. It's actually decreasing your dopamine. You're spending more time. You're depressed, so you go on Facebook and you hope you have some likes on your latest post, or you go on Instagram, whatever. So that's robbing you of dopamine too, every time you go on there. So people are just so starved of dopamine, they're always looking for that quick fix. Yeah. And when you eat a cookie, you get that sugar, or you eat a candy or chips or whatever. When you take that bite, it feels good.
Yeah, temporarily.
Right? Temporarily, yeah. I did this for years. I remember, during the winter in the office, I always, it'd be dark and, I'd be working. I still had stuff to do. So I'd go down to the vending machine and they had nothing but crap in there. And, I'd get some chips. And I very vividly remember this. I used to love Cheetos, or I thought I loved Cheetos. And I would just be like, okay, I'm going to finish this. And then as a reward, I'm going to go get some Cheetos. So I go to the vending machine, I eat some Cheetos, so excited for them. I ate one, the first one tastes good. And then I get like halfway through the bag, I'm like, oh, these things are disgusting. And then I finish them and I was just like, oh, now I feel like crap.
Oh.
And but how many people do that every single day?
Yeah.
And I did it so many times, even though I knew like, this is going to make me feel like crap, but it's just, you're so starved for dopamine. You're just like, I'm going to do it anyway. And then you do it and
yeah. And what's the best way to enhance dopamine naturally? What would be your opinion?
Well, natural sunlight.
That's right. Yeah.
So UVA from the sun. So getting outside in the sun, that cold water exposure.
Yes, the cold thermogenesis does it too. Yeah. Having
a conversation with someone you like.
Yes.
Just having a conversation with the wrong person also robs you of dopamine.
Right.
Yeah. So, instead of like going for a stroll down to the vending machine, I should have gone for a stroll to somebody's office and just popped in and be like, hey, how you doing?
Yep.
Just having that human interaction with somebody else and just kind of, you're getting a dopamine hit. And then when you get their positive reaction, you're getting some dopamine right back.
Yeah.
And another way to increase dopamine is by making eye contact with somebody.
Yeah.
So this is something, I asked, I was on a Q&A with Dr. Jack Cruz, and I was asking him some questions about dopamine. I asked him, I'm like, why is it that certain people, when, you look them in the eye and you smile, you can make them feel so good and they can make you feel so good? And the reason is because you have a pupil in your eye which absorbs and also emits light. So you can't see UVA light, but it comes out of our eyes. So when you look at somebody in the eyes, UVA light goes from your eye into their eye. And what does it make? It makes some dopamine. It makes some serotonin.
I love that.
It makes some oxytocin.
Yes.
Right? So just by making more eye contact, and it doesn't work, virtually through the computer. However, our voices can do that because our voice is an electromechanical wave. When it goes in the ear, it can be converted to other energy that creates dopamine or robs it. So if it's a voice that pleases you, if it's somebody that you enjoy speaking with, just calling somebody up on the phone that you like and talking to them, if you don't have the option of an in-person reaction, that can increase your dopamine too.
I love
So
that.
make more eye contact, which you can't do if you're constantly glued to your phone all the time.
Right.
And do this experiment. I'll do this sometimes. I'll just, like, if I'm in a grocery store or if I'm walking down the street, when you walk by somebody, just look at them and smile.
That's a dopamine hit. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? And they smile.
Mm-hmm.
And then you made somebody smile, and that makes you feel good. So there are lots of simple things you can do to increase your dopamine, but you have to do them. And it sounds like a lot of people would just be like, that's the weirdest thing ever. I'm not going to just like smile at a random person. That's creepy. But, try it out. And these are little things that you can incorporate into your life that just, after a while, it's just kind of natural for you.
Yeah, none of these are really hard. None of these tips are hard. It's like you're going to get out and watch the sun come up in the morning. You're going to cover up your extremities and get outside for a little bit. You're going to try your hand at either some cold splashes to the face or a dunk in cold water, or maybe a contrast shower of hot and cold as long as you can go, 30 seconds of each, and then ending on hot if you're just still too cold, or trying the cold bath, like you said. None of these are like you have to spend 50 minutes on a treadmill blasting it out. None of these are you have to go on a restrictive diet where you can only eat grapefruit all day long. None of these are like you have to join this retreat somewhere and fast for 90 days while you do yoga every day. Like it doesn't have to be extreme. These are tiny little things, like looking your spouse in the eye when you're talking to them, and like you said, smiling at someone you don't know and seeing if you get a response back, because even if you don't, you're probably going to feel better that you did it, and these little things is like, look out past this, like look out, what's out there past this. There's a lot out there that even in the winter you can find joy in. You can find, wow, I didn't know that I could be entertained without scrolling my feed on Facebook. So there's plenty more to discover. And, you and I agree that it's not about food at all. It's about light. It's about getting in touch with your circadian rhythm. But before we go, I do want to also touch on one last little thing, which there are some things in the winter, food-wise, that you can focus on to keep yourself even keeled. So in terms of like, on my end, I'll just say like, going a little lower carb, thinking about how normally in this cold time of year, it would be a little lean times. So generally, if you were out in the wild, you're not going to have access to strawberries and pineapple and large amounts of, brown rice or something like that. What you're going to have access to is whatever you could go out and forage, which would generally be animal meat and fat, and maybe some little roots and tubers that might last through the winter, or cruciferous veggies that might last through the winter, or something you canned, like a fermented sauerkraut. So if people think in terms of that, eating through the winter, they'll find that their cravings might be a bit less. And they'll also, if they're eating things like fatty salmon, they're actually going to get a little hit of vitamin D from that too to survive them through the winter. So what do you think in regards to food in the winter?
Yeah. I go super high fat in the winter. This morning I had half a pack of bacon, very lightly cooked, so I rendered out hardly any fat. Mm-hmm. But I'll do fish in the morning. I eat mostly fatty meats and green vegetables and cruciferous vegetables. So cauliflower, for example, which is not green. But did we talk about deuterium the last time? We had our chat,
but we need to talk about it more, because I just had a question on one of my YouTube podcasts. I think it might have been the one that you and I were talking about. How do we get it no matter where we live, is what somebody said. Is like they want to know, how do we make it? How do we get deuterium depleted water no matter where we live? Because maybe they don't live in a vicinity of how to figure out how to either create it or find it.
So when you say, how do you get it? How do you get deuterium depleted water?
Yeah, I guess they're thinking in terms of, should I find a spring? How do I know it's safe? Or should I have it shipped to me? Is there a company that makes it? I'm not down in the Yucatan where the cenotes are that has the deuterium depleted water, So depending on where we live, like how should we find the best deuterium depleted water?
Yeah, well, so it really depends on what you're dealing with. So if you have cancer, so most of us, if we're relatively healthy, we don't need to drink deuterium depleted water.
Okay.
If you're like a mega athlete, or if you have cancer or some other serious things, then you want to work with somebody that understands it. But there's Signature Health, which sends a test.
Okay.
So there's it's called a breathy test. They send you something, you breathe into it. They tell you your deuterium levels. They sell deuterium depleted water. And I think the lowest water they have is like 25 parts per million deuterium.
Okay.
There's also a company called Clarivia. It's Qlarivia.
Yeah, I've seen
If
that.
you Google that, you can find somebody that can sell it to you. Now, it's not cheap, but, if you have cancer, I would, if I ever found out I had cancer, I would go that route. And there's a book called, I think it's called Defeating Cancer. Got it over there somewhere. But there's been a lot of research on it, but a lot of people have cured themselves of cancer by drinking this deuterium depleted water. Okay. So Clarivia, they send different amounts, but the smartest thing is to buy the lowest level water they have, and then you can mix it with other water. So they sell one that's, I think it's also, their lowest is 25 parts per million, but somebody I know tested a bunch of waters, and that one came back at 19 parts per million. So it's even better than advertised. Wow. So a different strategy, and the strategy I use, because I don't have cancer, I'm not, I don't have any like horrible health issues, but a very deuterium depleted food is a pastured animal. So pork fat, bacon is very deuterium depleted. And if you look at the, chemical structure of fat, it's mostly carbons and hydrogens. Okay. And so when a pig eats food, it's very good, and especially when it's pastured food. So grass is a green, and it's very low deuterium. Pigs forage for other things, tubers and things like that. But their fat is very low in deuterium. And when you eat a pound of fat, your mitochondria, what do your mitochondria make? ATP, CO2, and water. So you have two different kinds of water. You have the water you drink, and you have the water you make, which is metabolic water. So when you eat 1 pound of fat, your cells make 1.1 pound of water. Okay. That's cool. So one of the best ways to get hydrated is not by drinking water, but by eating more fat.
Yeah.
So that's what I do in the wintertime.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's why people do so well on the carnivore diet, is they're eating a lot of fat, a lot of pastured animal meats, or just animal meat in general. And they're probably depleting a lot of the deuterium they've built up from other foods and water that can cause that, and environmental toxins and things like that. So that's wonderful.
100%. So for the waters, as far as just sourcing the different waters, there are 3 things that determine deuterium levels. One is latitude, the other is altitude, the other is geology. Okay. So the reason the water in Mexico is so good is because typically lower latitude water is going to be higher in deuterium. Okay. So the closer you are to the equator, as a rule of thumb, the higher the levels of deuterium. Also, the closer you are to the ocean, it's going to be a higher level. Right. But the cenotes in Mexico are limestone, and limestone, actually, that geology depletes the water of deuterium. Cool. Well, you also have the Gulf of Mexico, which has a very strong magnetic field, and just because of the whole geology of that region, water is lower deuterium. Now, as you get at higher latitudes, so as you get closer to like the North Pole and further from the equator, that water is going to have lower levels of deuterium. So like Icelandic water is a lower source. Volcanic rock, though, so some of the water from Iceland is from volcanic rock. Volcanic rock can actually increase the deuterium levels in water. So it's very interesting. And then so one reason, if anybody who follows Dr. Jack Kruse, or if you don't, he likes to drink Malbec wine. And the reason for that is because it's grown at a high altitude, and the water that feeds those grapes is from snow melt. So deuterium depleted water melts before heavy water, which has deuterium in it. So that water that feeds the grapes is snow melt, which is very low in deuterium. They're grown at a high altitude, so they get a lot of UV light. So those grapes are high in resveratrol. So that combination of low deuterium water, high resveratrol, makes Malbec wines a wine for the mitochondriac.
Yes. And in fact, I was never a wine drinker until I tried Malbec, and I really like any of the Malbec wines. Like they all just, to me, taste different. Other wines taste like cough syrup to me. So I really appreciated when he put that out there about what he likes to drink. I'm like, okay, I'll try that. And I actually ended up liking it. So there's actually a taste difference too. But I
Yeah.
know I've taken enough of your time today. Let's do this again, and let's do one on deuterium, because I do get a lot of questions about people not quite understanding it. So I think we need to do a whole podcast on the
Yeah. Okay.
aspects of deuterium, and maybe how to even, there's ways to create it at home using the freezer I've seen and stuff like that. So maybe we can just give some more, even if it's a quick one, just some tips and tricks on deuterium, and it help get it more layman's terms for people. So. Well, thank you
Yeah,
for
that
your
sounds great.
time. Yeah, and
Yeah, Jodelle, my pleasure. I hope you guys have an awesome Thanksgiving.
yeah, and tell people where they can find you briefly. Just let them know how they can. I mean, you do corporate speaking engagements and stuff, so maybe more people will be interested in having you do that. So how can they find you?
Yeah, my website is journeytooptimalhealth.com. And I'm really behind on my website, Jodelle, but most of my posts I do on my Facebook page.
Okay.
So if you just search Nathan Walz on Facebook, that's where I do most of my posts. I do have a Facebook page also called Journey to Optimal Health, and I do some posts there as well. But I tend to do most of my current stuff on my Facebook page. But if you go to my Journey to Optimal Health page, and if you search around there, I do have my top 9 biohacks. Okay. So they're all biohacks geared towards optimizing your mitochondrial function. But if you get that, you'll get signed up for my mailing list. And I share a lot of the posts I do on Facebook with my mailing list too.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, I definitely recommend people do that, because you're always putting out good stuff and always putting out good Facebook live seminars and things like that. So yeah, well, thank you again for today, and we'll do this again
my pleasure.
soon.
Yeah, well, take care, Jodelle. Thanks so much.
Okay, you too. Bye for now. Hey, I'd love to invite you to sign up for my 6-week and weight and wellness class series coming up January 2nd, 2019. It's a great way to start getting fit for the new year and get on track with some great topics such as optimizing your sleep, jump-starting your metabolism, managing stress and anxiety, how to deal and how to heal, as well as making over your environment to even help with weight loss and optimizing your health. So you can sign up by visiting my shop page on Get Fit with Jodelle. So just go to getfitwithjodelle.com, click on the shop page, and look for the 6-week weight and wellness class series. It's only $99 to sign up, and I'd love to have you be a part of it and be able to converse with you, whether it's online or in person. You can attend anywhere you are, at home in your jammies or with me at Kay's Coffee. It's totally up to you, and I'd love to be able to meet you and talk with you face to face, even if it's thousands of miles away. So sign up for that, and you can email me with any questions, getfitwithjodelle@gmail.com. Try a pair of raw optics for yourself and use code GETFIT to save 10% off your purchase. Visit rawoptics.io today and enter code GETFIT at checkout and get those nocturnal red ones. They're really groovy. So do you ever drop an F-bomb? I know I do, but I drop one in a healthy way, and I get them from dropnfbomb.com, and you can get yours and save 20% with my promo code GETFIT, GETFIT, all one word. And that's going to save you 20% off. And these are handy dandy little nut butter packets if you like nut butter, or oil packets to take on the go with you. They have MCT oil packets. They have avocado oil packets, which I love to healthfully fry things in and add to salads and stuff like that. So check them out, dropnfbomb.com. They've also got some really cool t-shirts there. I personally like the one that says fat on with an exclamation point. So that's pretty cool. So check them out, get your code, and go today to save and drop an F-bomb in a healthy way.
If aging is all part of being human, then anti-aging is somewhat of a fallacy. But we can for sure focus on positive aging and doing so in a way that keeps our skin vibrant and supple. For that, I recommend the organic and well-crafted skincare line, AnnMarie. To try it out in a little sample form, click the link in the show notes and try their $9.99 Restore Kit and let them help you become more positive about aging.